China has growing, as you said, double digits, and to me, this is not really normal. It's extraordinary. It's a bit abnormal. And moving to 7-8% to me is normal. So it's not really what we call this new normal. It is a normal thing. We're returning to be normal. The implication, of course, is profound because of this globalization, because of the production chain. Many countries in Asia and beyond really rely on China's growth for their own growth. So that certainly have implications. But going 7-8% for the next, say, 15, 20 years is also a very ambitious target. And I believe China can maintain that. Now, at the moment, China does face problem. You were asking whether it's a conscientious decision to slow down, and I believe that is the case. In the last 30 years, China has been growing very fast. It has accumulated wealth, but also has accumulated many problems. And just like a person, who is running very fast, but his health is suffering from some problem, you can continue to run, but it might be a good idea to have a rest, to have a health check, and try to diagnose and cure some of the problems, and including corruption, which China is working very hard, including environmental problem, pollution. Of course, we'll see what the government will do. But one of the three major issues is, apart from corruption and pollution, is inequality. So China, we know that in order to curb inequality, which is the equity issue, sometimes you have to sacrifice growth or efficiency. And China has been doing that, and China has achieved some success. Not many people actually realize China's inequality has been coming down since 2003. Between 2003, 2005, 2006, depending on the statistics and measurement. But in any case, I think it's confirmed inequality has been coming down. And that has a lot of implications for China's growth, which of course will have implications for other countries. If they can solve the inequality problem in China, China will continue to grow and will make the growth sustainable. And that, of course, will have implications for this region and those countries out of the region.
Right. So let me ask you about India, which I'm sure you're tracking as well. So one is we've got a new set of GDP numbers, which sort of places us on a slightly higher trajectory. So to what extent are you comfortable with these new numbers? And broadly, what are the challenges that you see ahead in terms of restoring growth or bringing back growth to the levels we saw a few years ago? And what are some of the other larger sort of attendant challenges?
ADB actually is doing a study right now on the binding constraints to growth in middle-income countries, such as China and India. And they identified three most important growth constraints. Number one is demographic dividends, which India is actually enjoying. China is going to actually losing that, not yet, but it's in the process. Second is actually the macro stability, which I hope the new government and in the future will maintain that kind of stability. The third one is actually openness. Openness, people will view openness simply as attracting, trade and attracting foreign capital, but actually it's much more than that. You actually learn you actually learn from foreign firms the advanced technology management and the culture as well. And I believe India is also going in that way. Now, we all know that one of the major practical problems with India's growth is infrastructure, which actually has something to do with manufacturing. And manufacturing generates jobs. People will view this infrastructure as a major obstacle and think that will drag India's growth for a long time. But I have always been saying that infrastructure is a short-run problem, not even a medium-run problem, or definitely not long-run problem. People now say China's infrastructure is super better than anywhere. You go to Europe, you go to the United States, China is better, super, much, much better. But back in 1998, I traveled across 10 provinces in 2 weeks. So you actually see the picture, right? Because in a short time, you actually constant travel. Infrastructure was pretty bad. It took me whole night to travel about 200 kilometers. That was 1998 in September. And it only took less than 10 years. China's infrastructure is up and running. It's one of the best in the world. So what I'm saying to our Indian friends is that infrastructure is a short-run problem. What you got to do is your openness, the way to finance infrastructure, and the most important, I think, in India is this land acquisition, which you got to find a model to make sure land acquisition can be done quickly, efficiently, and fairly. And that's China has done that differently because land largely owned by the state, and they did not really, mind you, China doesn't really have a good model of land acquisition. They just did that in an arbitrary way, but it worked. India probably won't go that way, and I hope it can work out a better way to do that.
So what's the model that you feel could work better for India, given the resistance that?
Well, basically, in the end, it's kind of sharing of what gains from this land acquisition. I mean, you know that once land is acquired for industrial or urban use, the land value grows 10, 20, even higher time, 30 times. And how to really share that kind of gain in that is the core. China faces the same problem, but because it's a strong government, it's not really a total democratic system, so they can do it in a different way. But India, I think they need to research and government policymakers can work together to find a good way to share these benefits, gains between whoever owns it, who actually uses it. I mean, I know in India there are many people, they don't really own it, but they actually live on it, and whoever is going to develop that, like developers or or companies, and that's something that requires research in this particular Indian context. But I'm sure there will be a way of doing it.
I mean, in some ways, you're saying that perhaps the current model is not really favorable to, let's say, the original residents of that land or the original owners of the land.
Well, in China, that has been a problem which caused a lot of social problems. It's always favored the companies. That's why they made a lot.
In India?
Well, in India, I think it's the ordinary people, the users, the owners do have a better say, but whether they get adequate share out of this gain is a question. And I'm sure if they do get adequate gains, which make them happy, will make things much easier.
Right. So you talked about infrastructure, and you said infrastructure is something which you see more as a short-term problem because it can be fixed, and at least in China it was fixed. You said openness is something that is a larger concern and perhaps need work. Can you dwell on that a little?
Well, openness is something has a lot to do with culture, whether you are receptive to open your economy. India has been trying to do that, and of course I have seen reports. You have the setbacks and forwards and backwards and forwards. China had some setbacks a couple of times, but by and large, China has been pushing for openness, and they give so much favorable policies to foreign firms. Now, actually, they are reverting. Says, why do we give more, say, favor to the foreign firms, even domestic firms do not enjoy. But I hope India will be able to some extent, provide favorable policies to foreign investors and also open up more sectors to foreign companies. Now, when China did open up, they did not open up completely. So they opened up certain sectors. They started with the coastal area, then they moved. India, I think you are actually experimenting that in some of the states, and I hope you will work out a way replicating that kind of success stories. Of course, China had failures, and I know there were some cases in India which were not successful, but you learn from that kind of experience, and I believe India will be able to learn.
Right. And are you looking at your GDP estimates for India, differently now? We've had a recalibration in any case.
Yeah, this kind of number crunching, we do that a lot. We do a lot, as a researcher, but I don't think that's very important. You can change that in many ways, but what really matters is the growth, is the people were living a better life. That's more important, I think, and people will have better expectations. I think that's important, and that's what's already happening right now in India. And the government and the society should ride on that tide and try to really develop the economy.
Right. And last point, just to come back to, you said the 2 or 3 areas that your study is looking at. One of them is demographic dividend. And so what's your sense there? If you look at India independently, I know you did say that China is now obviously aging compared to India. But is India in a position to really maximize this dividend, given its own challenges of, let's say, creating jobs, meeting the aspirations of younger people?
Well, that's where the manufacturing sector I mean, your India's manufacturing sector is lacking so much behind. In China, the manufacturing sector has always about 50%, varies high 40s and low 50s for many years. Actually, they maintain that. Of course, the size has been growing because of the growth rate. But India's manufacturing share has been quite low, and actually I think it's declined in recent years. But without manufacturing, you can't have job growth. That's why you suffer from jobless growth. Now, without jobs, you cannot solve inequality and poverty problem I mentioned in that meeting. And without solving this problem, you cannot really promote your demand. Without demand, even Indians can produce, given the external environment, you cannot really grow. So you need really to solve this inequality problem, and by really revitalizing your manufacturing sector, which of course relates to infrastructure. So it's not a simple problem, it's a systematic problem where you got to start from by opening up, by changing your regulatory framework, by changing your land acquisition system to make infrastructure development easier, which will help to promote in manufacturing sector, and that will bring your jobs and help solve these inequality and poverty problems.
Dr. Guanghua Wan, thank you so much for speaking with us.
My pleasure.